defense. So when the Bucks got the ball, their first drive, I thought the defense looked good. They looked prepared for what the Bucks were going to be trying to do that day. And from there, the offense scored, but then it did feel like the Bucks kind of hung around a little bit. And I think I attribute it to the 49ers being a little bit sloppy in a couple of areas. And I pointed it out at halftime, right? Like penalties, they had 5 penalties at that point to the Bucks 2. They were 3 of 6 on third downs. They were 1 of 3 in the red zone. They had taken 3 sacks. So, just all of those things combined, I think, is what kept the game a little bit close. But I liked the way the 49ers responded coming out of halftime because I felt like from that point on, it was kind of a different game.
Yeah, I thought it was important that they got that. I know it was just a field goal, but that field goal right before the half, Kyle Shanahan has kind of talked
Yeah.
about how he feels like it's important to get some sort of points there, and that he
Yeah.
kind of feels like it's an unfair advantage, especially if you get the ball coming into the second half, which they didn't do, but they did score right coming out of the second half, which kind of is like it's a momentum starter for the 49ers and it's a momentum killer for their opponent because you kind
Yeah.
of everyone knows, okay, we just made our adjustments. How are we going to set the standard for the rest of the game? And that third quarter was by far their most dominant performance in my opinion. So far, I felt like that was the quarter where they played on all sides of the ball up to their standard
Yeah.
110%, and you felt like they were playing like championship football in that quarter. Obviously,
Yeah.
they had some struggles, but they made the most important. I felt like on defense, like I would watch it, and for a little while, I'm like, why are they letting them hang around? But it felt like in the most critical moments, that's when they did make this up. So they weren't really giving up
Exactly.
like points. They were just like, I was like, they keep almost getting there. Like I felt like Baker had a lot of yards. I didn't look at the Buccaneers stats, but when I was just watching the game, I'm like, why are they kind of hanging around? Or that the one that I felt like was disappointing was when the sequence where the 49ers scored within like 90 seconds, but then the Buccaneers came right back and scored like a minute later, and you're like, why did that just? Because you kind of like, I felt like the whole game was like the Niners like pulling away, where you're like, okay, they're gonna score above 30. This is like
Yeah.
gonna be a domination, but the Buccaneers like kept like not being in arm's reach, but like made you worry that they were about to be in arm's reach.
Yeah, they
You
they
know?
were trying. They were definitely trying. They
Yeah.
were giving their best effort. I feel like Baker Mayfield gets a bad rap because of the quarterback that he looked like in Cleveland, right? I mean, he didn't look so great there, and people use his time there to kind of judge the type of quarterback that he is even today. But ever since he left Cleveland, like he's a pretty solid quarterback. And so I do have to give some credit to him and I think he was part of the reason why you kind of felt like the Bucks were hanging in there for a bit too. So he gave his best effort, but yeah, I think the 49ers bent, but they didn't break, right? Especially like you said, in those key moments in the fourth quarter, there were a few of those moments, and especially having to do it without Talanoa Hufanga. I mean, that added a little extra stress to it, right? But they were able to overcome the Bucks' best efforts. So at the end of the day, like you want to see the 49ers play a cleaner game, particularly like I said in the first half, like
Mhm.
they kind of let go of some things. But at the end of the day, a win is a win, right? And sometimes winning ugly, it doesn't matter. You have to have
Yeah.
that as part of your repertoire. And I think the 49ers proved, they can win even if it's ugly.
So that's kind of what I was gonna say is like in some ways, and maybe this is just me trying to see like glass half full in every instance, because I will admit, and maybe it's just my lack of paying attention to the Buccaneers to the Buccaneers, but you don't want to like talk the talk because you've seen the 49ers kind of struggle, but I did like, there was a portion of my brain that was like, they're gonna blow them out because it's the Buccaneers. So then when I was
Hmm.
watching, I was like, why are they better than I thought they are? I just felt, or I felt like the defense was, 'cause I mean, we're gonna get to it later, but Brock Purdy played phenomenal, and he was still sacked like 5 times. Like that defense was extremely disruptive. And you're right, Baker was making good plays. I felt like, and we're not Bucks content creators, but I felt like their game plan was kind of bad. Like they didn't really get Mike Evans or Chris Godwin involved. I was listening to the broadcast. It was in the second, like end of the second quarter when Mike Evans caught his first pass. I was like, what are you? I don't know. If I was them, I would have been targeting him way more. But for looking at it from the 49ers perspective and trying to see kind of glass half full that it was more of a hard fought win, which is ironic because they covered a 13, 14-point spread. Um, but we have been kind of questioning, okay, like, can the 49ers win a different way? And this
Mhm.
technically wasn't winning a different way because right out the gate, the 49ers got a stop. And then the 49ers offense went out and scored. So they did start with a lead, but it wasn't the like domination win that maybe they've become accustomed to when they were blowing people out in the first 5 games. This felt like to me it felt like okay, Brock Purdy is being not only is he facing physical pressure against from the defense, but he has some mental pressure going on. Like the Buccaneers are keeping it close. He knows like one turnover, they score one touchdown, like there it's a game. And I was impressed to see how not only Brock Purdy but the whole entire team I felt like responded to that pressure and maybe like didn't let themselves get down or get overwhelmed by that because we've seen in the past when they score and then immediately the Bucks score or not the Bucks but a different team scores, you kind of seen that rattle them. And so I was excited watching this game. It felt like those things weren't spooking them. It felt like they were confident within themselves and that they were kind of cool under pressure, but that they had their goal and they knew they kind of wanted to keep their foot on the gas. And that's kind of like the only time it seemed like maybe they started slowing down a little bit toward like when I'm talking about the fourth quarter, that seemed more intentional by them. I think maybe Kyle Shanahan was like, "Hey, we got a Thursday night game. We're going to start like running the ball and just winding down the clock now." It didn't feel like something where they like gave up. Like I think they potentially could have scored another touchdown if they were like really determined to. But I think they were more like, okay, let's not try to turn the ball over. Let's just run it out and kind of try to save our guys for Thursday. But did you get that at all? Because
Um,
I know we've talked about different styles of wins for this team.
I mean, I think the 49ers would have actually loved if the Bucks didn't score in the fourth quarter and they could have probably given their starters a bit of a rest excuse me, ahead of that game on Thursday. But
Mhm.
because the Bucks scored, they kind of had to stay in there and just, play that prevent defense, make sure they don't get another score and make this interesting, right? Um, so that was a little unfortunate there at the end, but I like your positivity. You're thinking like, if they can keep the Bucks from making it too close and if they can you know what? It felt like the 49ers had control of the game even when the score was close. And I feel like the 49ers knew that too. Like, okay, let's just focus here and clamp down, and they did, the defense especially, when it mattered most. So I think it's just a matter of, hey, we know we can do it. Let's just do it, kind of thing. Because that's been the story of this team. Like when they play their best ball, no one can beat them. They can beat themselves, and that's why it
Right.
was close in the beginning, right? But I think they kind of just focused up towards the second half, and especially in the fourth quarter after the Bucks were trying to make it a closer game.